Welcome to the Coach Speak podcast, built for coaches, by coaches, hosted by Jamie Bolton and Dustin Martin, sponsored by Ray Crowther, providing athletic training equipment since 1932, helping you dominate with fundamentals.
Presented by our sponsors, Pro Quick Draw, a dynamic playbook platform, and Team Builder, the #1 software for strength and conditioning coaches.
Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Speak. It's Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton. We have a very special guest today, Mr. Coach Jason McManus, and Bolton's going to introduce him. So Jamie, introduce Coach McManus a little bit for us.
Yeah, man, exciting time. We get Coach McManus on. I've coached against Coach McManus. He probably didn't know who I was at the time, but I always looked up to him. And we actually coached at the same school. He left and I came in, but then we were across the sidelines in South Carolina. And I've gotten to know Coach McManus over the last couple of years really well. He was on staff with us at our current school, but Coach just brings such a wealth of knowledge with 14 years of college football coaching experience, 10 years of high school, and in that time he's accumulated 4 state titles as an offensive coordinator, 2 semifinal appearances, and has been a high school football coach for 10 years and is known really throughout the country as a huge contributor to offense and really defense too. And so we're really excited to hear from him and we can kind of get these things going. Coach, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you, guys. I'm so grateful that you thought enough of me to bring me on, and I'm excited to see this podcast take off with you two guys. I know with your creativity and ability to grow and learn that this podcast is going to be huge in the future. So hopefully I can play a small part in the growth of this platform.
Oh, there's no doubt, Coach. We're excited. So let's go ahead and get into the first part, and it's something that we were kind of talking about off air. You know, we've talked a lot of ball together, and we've talked a lot of X's and O's, and I've learned a lot from you. And but one thing I don't know a whole lot about is, you know, kind of your background in coaching, how you got started. So if you don't mind, just kind of giving us an idea of that.
I grew up in a really small town, Newton, North Carolina, little 2A school, about an hour north of Charlotte. And growing up in a small town, Friday night lights, one-horse town, the high school football coach was a big deal. And I remember as a young kid lining up at 5:30 to get in the varsity games, and I just knew from a young age that I wanted to be a coach, and there's never been a doubt in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. Played high school football, walked on at Gardner-Webb, wasn't any good, but the coaches liked me and let me hang around for a couple years. And when I finished playing at Gardner-Webb, I kind of was in a crossroads. Do I just go back and coach at the local high school, or do I maybe go off and try to be a GA somewhere? So I had a PE department chair help me go to graduate school at Middle Tennessee State. Me and my grandmother drove up to Nashville, and we walked into the coach's office and asked if I could volunteer. And my first year as a GA, I was a volunteer special teams coach, and then they hired me as a defensive GA. And then from there, I coached the DBs. I was helping all over the place. One of the things that I am the most grateful for in my career is, and I'll tell anybody this, I was trained the right way as a young coach. I learned all the lessons in those 3 years of what a young coach should be doing, whether it was making copies, picking up the head coach's wife at the airport, going to get lunch from the coaches. I mean, you name it, checking class, I did it. So that ingrained in me to who I am today. And then from there, just started that journey as a young college coach. I coached Division III, Division II, 1AA. Kind of, what we all aspire to do as young coaches, just climb the ladder. And when I was in my 20s, anytime I had a chance to go make $500 more and get a meal ticket, I was gone. So, but it was all in an attempt to grow. And we got fired at UT Chattanooga, and I was kind of spinning my wheels there, so to speak, and had a chance to move back home in 2014 at South Point. And I remember when I was thinking about moving back to the area, I sent emails out to pretty much all the coaches in the upstate, and Coach Heron reached out to me, and had a chance to go work at South Point with Coach Heron, and that was after Coach Carroll, and just an absolute amazing experience there. We had some of the greatest players the state's ever seen. We had some really good coaches, and we went on an amazing run where we won a bunch of state titles, and we had an offense, man, that just fit. It just worked. And we had kids who could do it. We had a quarterback who was unbelievable as a dual threat guy, but he could function in the air raid pass game. So it was just ridiculous how good he was and how good we were. And then didn't get the head coaching job, and then moved around a little bit and worked in Spartanburg, got a chance to work for Chris Miller, had a chance to go coach at Grayson in Georgia, which is a 7A program, and I wanted to see that. And then the last 2 years I've been at Nation Ford High School, or the last year I was at Nation Ford as a OC and then the interim head coach. So it's been quite the journey. I've learned a lot, been around some great coaches, some great men. So definitely had a great career to this date.
Yeah, Coach. So that's awesome. So you actually started on the defensive side of the ball when you became a GA and started coaching.
I did, yeah. We were in the 3-3 stack in 2001 when what was his name? Joe Lee Dunn was at Mississippi State and Charlie Strong was at South Carolina. We put that defense in back in the day and coached linebackers, spent a lot of time in the secondary. I was a defensive coordinator at a Division III school. Then I coached at Tusculum for 2 years where we're in the 3-3. So it really helped me learn coverages and learn how defenses fit stuff up. And it's kind of cool how you become full circle. You become a head coach and you're running stuff that you learned 10 years ago. And so I definitely think that helped me kind of be a better offensive coach because I feel like I understand gaps and weaknesses and holes in coverages and guard bubbles and all that other stuff. So it's definitely helped me for sure.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me, because when we were at York, you were at South Point, so we played each other every year, the 3 years that I was at York, and it explains a little bit like your eye for the game, when we watch your play calling and the space you're trying to hit and how you stretch the defense, side to side, but also vertically. Coach, I don't know. I remember one time we got a scout film from y'all and the audio was on and you called it from the box and it was Ringo, I think 52. So I think that's stretch right with a ball or something. But Spencer said, "Yep, that's the exact call that he called when I was playing." So we were just cracking up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was funny. I used to give and that happened to us more than one time. You got some kid filming your games, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, cut the sound off." So it's definitely, we've had all types of funny stories like that. Me and a couple of our coaches used to talk about we pitching a tent over the circus. So that's par for the course of places we've been. But yeah, just player-friendly scheme, very, very simple, very efficient, where you have good players who can play fast, and then being able to take advantage of grass, I think, has been something that we've done a great job over the years for sure.
Yeah, I'm really interested. You've had so many stops and so many lessons learned. I know there's some key turning points that I want to get to, but my question that kind of comes up is, which do you prefer coaching? Is it that D2, like college level, or is it high school level? And then speak a little bit to, that level of football, maybe like a 7A Grayson versus, the D2 or even the D3, and how does that kind of differ? And I've always been curious.
Yeah, to me, man, all these guys that want to get in college football, if you can't get hired on as an analyst at South Carolina or Tennessee, it's not worth it. And, it's 7A football in the state of Georgia. Our whole offense was Power 5. I mean, our tight end, Florida State, our center was Georgia, our receiver was Florida, the quarterback was Central Florida, the slot was South Carolina State. It was just stupid talent. And we were able to line it up and run things like a college program. So I just think a couple things. There's not a lot of money in it unless you're coaching at the high FCS level. That the D2, man, it's a grind, it's a struggle, the facilities, the resources. So I would even, I think coaching 7A football in Georgia or even 5A football in South Carolina, really you're going to make more as a teacher and coach doing that than you're coaching at a D2. So I think and I've known several coaches over the years who have been successful head coaches, and they're like, "Well, Coach Newberry just called me and offered me the running back job for $25,000 a year." Well, go ahead. I mean, so it's just not worth it, again, unless you just have a major desire to do that. But, when you're younger and you're single and you're chasing that dream, you're okay coaching D2, D3, 1 because you're on that trajectory. And you talk about a turning point, when we got fired at UT Chattanooga, that was the turning point for me as a college coach, because there's a million and a million and a million coaches like us three who want to break into college football. So the competition is fierce to even get in college football. And then you add that we didn't play in the SEC. We didn't have a dad who coached in the SEC. We don't have all those things going for us. We weren't born on third base like some of these guys. So it makes it even harder to break in. And so once you kind of get fired or you step away, it's hard to get in it. But I would fully recommend guys coaching 5A football or 7A. It's definitely better than coaching small college football.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so with that, I know you said that was a key turning point in your entire career. Is there a turning point maybe in your high school years that you're like, man, this is like an epiphany. This is really changing the trajectory, not maybe career wise, but maybe, some lessons you learned that really shaped you, and, maybe talk a little bit about X's and O's, and then also maybe philosophy too, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I think two situations. Number one, when I did not get promoted to be the head coach at South Point, in January of 2019, that was definitely, when you're the offensive coordinator at a 4-time state champ, I think typically you walk in and hand that guy the keys to the job and you keep rolling. But when you have a change of administration, some logistical things come up, you definitely, makes it tough. So I had a decision to make there, whether I stayed there and work with the new coach or had a chance to go work for Chris Miller at Spartanburg. Well, obviously Chris Miller was a Hall of Famer, won a bunch of state championships at Burns, and they had played for one at Spartanburg. Didn't they beat you guys when they were?
They beat us in 14, yes.
Yeah, so being able to go learn from him and see it done in 5A, I will say, there's a big difference in Spartanburg County and Rock Hill as far as facilities and resources and money, and so I think it was a great move at the time. But he ended up retiring after the one season I was there. And then COVID hit in March of 2020, was right after that. So it just went nuts. But and then the second part is when I took the head coaching job at Myers Park, and I think this is a great lesson for coaches. I was not present where my feet were as the head coach. I'm trying to run a program that had just come off a national scandal, like I was coaching at Grayson or coaching in college football. And I was working at a place that had never seen that pace, that organization, that intensity, that attention to detail, the demand of the coaches, and it didn't go well. So I think a great nugget and a turning point for me is I was not present at the time. I wasn't present where my feet were. I wasn't catering my style to where I was at. I was trying to do things like I would have done them at another school. And I think that was a great lesson that I learned at the time of, hey, you have to be present where your feet are. And you have this list of like, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And then you get there and you're like, okay, well, they can't handle that, or we don't have the kids to do that, or there's resources to do that. And I never really pivoted. I kind of just kept going. I think that's a great lesson for everybody listening, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, I think we could probably all speak to that. I remember my first offense coordinator job, and I was 25 years old actually it was at Marvin Ridge. And it's just weird how all the overlapping with all of us coaching at similar places. But I was 25 years old. We were at a 1A or 2A school and in the other part of the state. And I thought I could just bring that offense and like go cookie cutter mode into that system. And they were successful before I got there. And it's just a lot of butting heads. And I get it, man. Like that's a big, we talked about some of that adapting and trying to do that, but it's so hard. And you really have to have a lot of buy-in to make things work. And sometimes humans are hard to deal with.
Yeah. And I think too, when you don't have people around you who can mirror that, it's different when you're doing it by yourself. But if you had 2 or 3 guys around you who had experienced that with you, they can kind of be a coffee bean and transform it inside out. So that makes it tough. But again, as I don't apologize for the pace in which I do things and the way I was trained, because I know that's the right way to do things. And of course, people who have never really experienced that pace and that intensity of 7A football in Georgia, or, playing on the road at Buford, Georgia, when you're a nationally ranked South Point program, like guys who have never been a part of that can't relate to that. So when you carry yourself and you work that way, it doesn't work well for a lot of people.
Yeah, no. And coach, I have a ton of respect for you, able to evaluate yourself and understand that, because, I went through something, and it's in my first head coaching job the exact same way. And, Me and Bolton talk about this all the time, but it's, your plan is so well thought out in so many details, and then you're placed in a place where that plan doesn't necessarily fit 100%, and being able to take out what needs to be taken out, but also still stand on what you believe in and your standards. And so, just to echo both of you, I think every coach will have that at some point in time, and what you do with it after you learn it really makes kind of the difference.
It's a fit. It's a fit issue. It's like
it is. That's a great point, man. The fit and the support of the administration is critical too. Like being able to support you when you're going to get pushback and resistance from the change. And even this year at NAFO, stepping as the interim, I did take an approach like I just need to keep this thing going, and so I definitely, I handled this better than I did at previous stops. So I was proud of this year for sure.
Yeah. No, Coach, that's all great. One thing I kind of want to know is, as a player, most people have a coach that kind of impacts them to go down that road of coaching. But like once you became a coach, or whether it was a GA, who do you think was your biggest influence in your coaching, and who kind of molded you to be who you are?
My high school coaches. When I grew up, and again, growing up in the small town, the high school football coach in that town was a big deal. When I was a little kid and seeing him at the local diner, like, that's the football coach. I want to be like him. And then, he was more popular in that small town than the mayor was. So growing up, seeing the local high school team play, and then going into high school and just being impacted by grown men that were great coaches. I can remember every single one of my high school coaches by name and what they taught at the school. So just being impacted by great men who, they were great coaches, but they were great men. And even though we were silly high school kids, like I can remember just how good of men they were and how relatable they were, and how much they cared for us. And my high school football experience definitely impacted me to do that. But without a doubt, my high school coaches. And then my grandmother was a huge support for me growing up. But I always wanted to be like my high school coaches for sure.
Yeah, just I want to kind of know, I think you have a very detailed philosophy when it comes to a lot of things, and I really think that we worked well together, and I leaned on you a lot. I remember one time we were at, and you were in the box for me, thankfully, and man, I had such a good experience. That you really helped me coming in my first year as OC at Kings Mountain, and that's the same thing. It's like you're coming in new, they've been successful, and it's good to have like-minded people. And me and you kind of, I think, clicked early on. But one of the big stories I kind of remember. And you're one of those guys for me. Like you're a pivotal guy for me, and learning from me in just a short time. But we're playing South Point, and I'm sure you remember this. We're running like GH counter, and you're like, Coach, they're not even covering the seam, man.
Yeah.
And so you're like, and so I was like, I think we ran this like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and so we just called it, and man, it hit, and we were all jacked up. So man, it's just so fun to be with like-minded guys to kind of tie that all in. I mean, I think it's fun to be around guys that not only do it from an X's and O's standpoint, but do it from a philosophical way to pour into kids and do it the right way. So
yeah,
cool.
Man, I'll never forget in 2018. So Bolton was calling the offense. We were playing y'all at York, and I remember, obviously being an offensive coach, I don't have time to watch the other team's offense. Like we're deep diving into the defense, and I remember me and Bolton were kind of summing up the drive. We were getting ready to go back out. Y'all were on offense. And I looked up, and you were in trip snub double tight. And I was like, wait, I thought this dude was air raid, because I hadn't watched any film. And I said, man, he's in 12 with twins. I was like, man, I said, he ain't playing no games. But that's kind of, and I think that was when I realized, I never have time to watch the other team's offense. And after that, I kind of just noted a little bit more of how you created space with tight ends and did different things versus your typical 1-back 4 open and just sling the ball. So that was neat. That was kind of the first moment I was like, man, he does a lot on offense.
We think, when I speak at Glacier Clinics, one of the first things I say is like, we're not some just Sammy spread air raid. I know you got your I don't know if you got a visor on over there, Dustin, but I always
Titleist,
visor guys, I'm not we are, you don't win state titles by being soft, and you have to run the football. And then course, one of the things, I've done over the years too is if I'm watching film and the opponent before us does something creative or a funky formation and the team doesn't line up correctly, I'm going to steal that formation and we're going to run our plays to that formation. And that's been so good to us over the years. So I do think being multiple in high school and, we were blessed to have the bodies to do that stuff where I didn't have to steal 2D linemen from individual to be a tight end. I could put our third string guard at a backside tight end and get in the way or something like that. And going back to what you said, that creates great player buy-in when you can put that third string kid who might be a booster club kid as a fullback and he's in there for 2 plays and he just runs into somebody. But that's always been cool to do too, because it creates value and a lot more players get the opportunity to play, and it really helps with team morale too.
No doubt. I think just talking about that kind of thing, I think now we can kind of move into, and I've always watched your film and tried to see what you do, especially as a younger coach and trying to learn from you. And I've always seen your film, but I haven't seen what you've done on the back end or the front end, excuse me. So like your off-season preparation, your planning, your structure. Can you talk a little bit about, you could be as specific or as broad as you want, but just a little bit about your off-season process, when that starts, like right after the last game. Talk to us a little bit about that, because we just went through that in our previous episode.
Well, when we finish, one of the things that I think I've done a tremendous job over the years is the self-scouting during the season. I've had a coach for 10 years, ninth grade coach. I mean, down to the down and distance to 2-minute to blitz. I mean, we have every ounce of data inputted in our self-scout. So throughout the season, I'm always running a 3-game self-scout. So I'm going back, and I've always been a guy that's more worried about what we do. And I know, Jamie, you're passionate about that too, like just kind of getting really good and doing what you do. So I'm always evaluating myself as a play caller. I go through every play. Was that a good call? Was that a bad call? What could we have done better here? So for me, more so during the season, it is about self-scouting, evaluation. Once we get into the playoffs, I do like a 10-game self-scout, because one of the things that's helped us over the years is, a lot of coaches, I know, Dustin, you probably go back and you're watching game 1. If you're watching everything, there's a lot of high school coaches that won't go back and watch game 2 in the playoffs. So being able to pull stuff early in the year that they haven't seen is something that's always been good to us, because there's so much volume and so much accumulation of reps and what we do. But so the self-scout for me has always been a huge, huge, huge thing during the season. And we all break down film. We watch a couple games, personnel, blitzes, we all do the same stuff. But we kind of look at grass and, a touch chart for some of our good players and how do we run our core runs. And I know Lincoln Riley made a great point one time, and I believe this too, our passing game, like how can we carry all our passing game across every down and distance? I want our core concepts to be good versus on 1st and 10 or choice down as opposed to 3 and 7. I want it to all be good. So it cuts down a lot of preparation, especially when you're a no-huddle team. It locks a lot of teams in base coverage. I can't tell you how many times we've sat in there on Sundays and what's the coverage? 4-1 quarters, 4-1 quarters, 4-1 quarters. All right, guys, let's play. So that's kind of in a nutshell during the season. A lot of self-scout, just a ton of self-scout. And then I run cut-ups after the season. I don't really dive into my cut-ups a whole lot in November and December. I'm getting ready for Glacier clinics, and I'm pulling data, getting on Pro Quick Draw, doing a lot of drawings and things of that nature. And then I do the Glacier circuit. So for me, January and February and March is a lot of professional development on my end, studying our stuff, speaking at clinics. And then I'm also studying other people. Like, for example, this year, if I was the head coach at NAFO, I was probably going to move a quarterback to receiver, a receiver to quarterback, and then I was going to go visit Liberty because we're going to be some option stuff. Because he would have been our best option to play quarterback. So, kind of making a decision maybe in February and March about the trajectory of next year's scheme and what are you planning on doing. One of the things, I've never really gone out in March. I've kind of waited till April to go out. With open season, you can go out in March now. But one thing I do like to do, and I think this is a nugget for all the coaches, we try to get 5 or 6 installs done before the first game. So we'll go out in April 5 or 6 days, whether it's during the weight class or after, and we'll install our offense and defense. we'll do 3 days of install, and then we'll repeat days 4, 5, and 6. I think maybe Jamie, we even talked about that when we were together. Day 1 and day 4 are the same. Day 2 and day 5 are the same. Day 3 and day 6 are the same. So we repeat the installs, and then we do an April install. We do a May install where we install the offense again. We do a June install. We do a July install. Then we do an August install. So I've always felt good about, hey, we're going into our first game, and we've installed our offense and defense about 5 or 6 different times. And we just repeat the install over and over and over.
And are you adding layers to that install? Like if you,
yeah. So I've always been a big believer in throwing everything at the kids in the spring and the summer. I don't want to ever go into a game 3, and we put in something we've never ripped. I always like to feel good about, hey guys, y'all remember when we ran this in this 706? Yeah, coach, I remember we ran that. So there's always recall. And then of course we have a menu, but yeah, you layer it, you teach the base, and then we're a 10 personnel team. Then we go to 20, 12, and then we window dress with motion. But I do like the fact that we're able to install at least 6 times before we play the first game. And then you just, you keep repeating over and over and over. But that's been really good for us over the years.
Yeah. And we were just talking about in the last episode how, personnel decides what formations you run, and then that decides what plays you run. And I think it's really neat to hear you talk about, where you currently were, you knew the situation with personnel. So you knew that you were going to have to move a receiver to quarterback and adapt your scheme and add new things in like Liberty does. I think that's super important to hear, because we always talk about your scheme has to fit your personnel. And the fact that even someone like you is as knowledgeable and as great of an offensive coach you are, you still are like, okay, what is best for the kids we have? Like, you're willing to change positions and do a scheme that you wouldn't traditionally do. And I think that's huge to hear.
We had 3 running backs coming back. So, we were going to be 20, 12, 30 personnel. We were just getting ready to go in this whole different world. And I think too, it also helps you reinvent yourself every year as a coach. That's kind of exciting, like being able to go in a different world, but you still don't have to get very far away from what you do. And we've had to do that, even when we had the athletic quarterbacks. That's not really air raid. We're running power, jet read, toss read. I remember clinicking with David Reeves, who was at South Florida at the time. And I'm like, I got a guy that he cannot be a drop back quarterback. There's just no way. I'm not going to invest my time, but we get him on the move. We can run him. So I think that's the greatest measure of a high school coach, is how do you adapt your scheme and your system and your program to who you have. And I do know that we won state championships, and we beat teams who were better than us because their coaches tried to do things with their kids that they could not do. And they lost. The coaches lost the game. I'll give you an example. You remember Shy Smith, who was with South Carolina. They put him at Wildcat one time. They ran quarterback sweep. He stuck his foot in the ground, took it 80. He didn't touch the ball again the rest of the game. But they had a quarterback, and they kept throwing it. The dude threw 4 interceptions, and we beat him. And I'm literally in the press box like, if we just hold on, their coaches are going to lose the game. So I've definitely seen on both sides of it. But yeah, just have a great scheme, do what you like to do, but you've got to be able to pivot and play complementary football and find a way to win. Tony Franklin told me a long time ago, do not let your ego get in the way of winning.
So with that, what positions, well, you probably evaluate all positions, but talk to us a little about how you go through that evaluation process. Let's say your first day on the job, and man, you got this spring, you show up in March or April, and you got to try to evaluate to try to adapt, because you don't even know what you got yet. But kind of talk, if you've been there a couple of years, it's a little easier. But talk about like first day on the job in the spring, and you're trying to evaluate and trying to shape your offense to fit the personnel ability.
I think the first thing you do is kind of, when you go outside, you almost want to do some type of like combine / training deal where you just watch, you run the kids through the bags, you do change of direction drills, you say, hey, one day they're all going to go to offense, one day they're all going to do. So you're probably first 2 or 3 days, you're just seeing kids move, seeing kids run, seeing kids change direction, throwing kids balls, looking at their hips, looking at their feet. so you just evaluate almost like the combine in a way.
Coaches, if you're still using spreadsheets or outdated software for your strength and conditioning programs, it's time for an upgrade. TeamBuilder is the leading platform for modern strength and conditioning, trusted by top high schools, colleges, and professional teams. With TeamBuilder, you can easily program workouts, track progress, and engage athletes like never before, all from one powerful, user-friendly app. Join thousands of coaches who are streamlining their training and getting real results daily. Click the affiliate link in our show notes to sign up for a free 30-day trial with the promo code CoachSpeak.
And then obviously, you have to look at your quarterback and see, like, can he throw? Can he throw a hitch? Can he drop back? Just evaluating his skill set and, is it worth investing time in being an air raid team, or are you going to be more run game? So I think it's evaluating the quarterback. I think it's evaluating the players and their movements. Again, my strength coach can say, Coach, well, here's our no. I don't care about strength numbers. I want to see what they can do on the field. So, and then of course evaluating film from the previous year. And I think doing a deep dive in the roster, that's another thing that we did a great job at South Point, is we never wasted a player, not one time. If we had a backup defensive back that didn't play corner, but he could come start for me at receiver, his rear end was coming to play receiver. And so diving into the roster, watching players move, even moving in the weight room, and you can kind of tell what kids can do. And then the quarterback. And then once you kind of start putting them in spots, then you go from there. But being fluid, and that goes back to being able to install your stuff multiple times, and having simple schemes, right? You may move a kid to DB middle of May, but that's okay because you're going to teach him the defense 2 more times in the summer. So it's not like he's so far behind. But yeah, it's just a lot of evaluation and watching the kids work out and move, and then you kind of put them in positions and go from there.
Yeah, no, the other day I actually went up to Kings Mountain and hung out in the weight room with Bolton, I think first to third block. And one of the warm-ups he was doing was banded wide base crossover. So the kids kind of start facing you, and then they got to basically flip their hips, wide base, cross their hips over. And I was watching, and he was telling me who the football players were. And I said, he plays DB. He said, yep, corner. Like you're talking about, like, I think the weight room and on the field movement stuff is such a easy way to, like, man, like, you got to play receiver and DB at least, because like your hips are just where they need to be. And I think that's a really huge part of it. So like, Coach, when you hit spring ball, you talk about your installs, you have a certain amount of installs you want to do. When you're looking at a quarterback, what are you trying to achieve? Like, finding out what he can do best in the spring. Like, what do you want to know from him at that position? What is the top things you're looking for?
I think the first thing is just the moxie and the relatability to his teammates, man. Like, that is so critical. Is he brave? Does he have moxie? Can he catch a snap? Is he confident? Is he the first one on the practice field? Like, those are all those intangibles, man, that matters. I've had a quarterback who couldn't even catch a snap. He was so scared. So, like, all those qualities that you want in a quarterback, those are the things I'm looking for the most. I've never been a guy that's going to come out there and try to change a quarterback's throwing motion or do any of that. Like, I think as a junior or senior, you are who you are. And so can they function? Are they athletic enough and to make the throws and bend their knees in the run game and all those things that you just want a kid to be able to do? Like that, like you just said, you can watch them. And I kind of go back to what you just said about, you can evaluate kids, and you got that kid who thinks he's a running back, but he's probably an offensive lineman, right? So based on birth what position they're going to play. So a lot of it takes a lot of it works itself out. So
I think it's funny. So I think it was Coach Pierce, David Pierce, I think, who said, "Yeah, man, worst thing that happened to Rock Hill football was Clowney." He said because everybody thought they were a D lineman. He said, so what we had to do was line everybody up and say take off. He said in the slowest half, y'all go to OL. Yeah, and it was he just cracked me up with that. Great dude.
We've had so many H-backs and tight ends over the years, and I tell them, I'm like, look, if you drop another pass, you're going to offensive line. And so, but yeah, I just think it really goes back to the personality of the quarterback, the moxie, the relatability to his teammate. Do his teammates trust him? And again, kind of going back to what I said earlier about like here at NAFO, like we have a junior and a rising senior that I know that group of seniors is not going to trust those kids. They don't believe in, but they believe in that receiver who had 1,000 yards and was a great player last year, that they would believe in him at quarterback. So it's so deep when it comes to that, as opposed to the ability. It's do they trust their team? Do the teammates trust them? Do they have the confidence, the swag? Are they consistent? Are they unemotional? Can they handle hard coaching? And, all those things go into it. And then you just look at can they make the throws? Can they run a little bit? Are they athletic? All those things. Because it really, really determines what you can do based on what that guy can do, man.
How much do you put on your quarterback? And I'm sure that probably varies, based on their experience levels or, how savvy they are. But how much do you put on your quarterback, like to communicate and all that?
I think one thing that I've always done is I've taken a lot off the quarterback. And I've been a very, very, I guess, hands-on, wordy play caller where, like, I want the lineman making calls. So initially, I don't put a lot because I call everything. So everything is in place for the quarterback. Our running backs do the protections. I know, your quarterback makes the protection call, but I learned from the Franklin stuff, the running back makes the protection call because that seems to cue them into protection. We've had our center make the protection call. Our center makes a run call, but it's naturally gravitated to them once they start hearing the verbiage and then they pick the things up. They start naturally kind of taking on a lot of that communication. But really for us, the only thing our quarterback has to do is get the signal, echo the formation, make sure everybody's set, and then give the clap and ready to go. Our backs make the protection. Our linemen are making the run game calls. But once he gets really comfortable, then you'll see him start taking a lot of that on.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so again, it's different. But I've always been, especially if you have a kid who's not vocal or, like with some of the kids we've had, like it just took a lot off their plate. But, you can do it a bunch of different ways. But I've always been very hands-on with the play calls and what we do. It's all kind of built in. So there's really not a lot of communication, so to speak.
For sure.
I remember in 2017, we were playing at South Point. And so this is DK, probably one of the best athletes, best players I've ever seen in person. But what he was warming up, he had a bandana on with his beats, and everybody else had their helmet on. Yeah. And I looked at Spencer, and, we're like little GA coaches, first, second year coach, and we're 19 years old. I looked at Spencer, I said, he's got to be pretty good to dress like that. Spencer said, yeah, man, I've been watching him all week. So as the game went on, I noticed you didn't want him to pat the ball more than twice because if he patted it once or twice, he's throwing it. But if he patted it that third time, hold on because he's getting ready to take off. And, man, one of the best players I've witnessed in person. But man, I had to bring that up.
He's a stud.
Coach Carroll, too, like, and I learned that from Coach Carroll, like, a guy like that, man, like, he had his headphones on, but when I talked to him, he took his headphone off. He was listening to what I was saying, like, it's not a big deal, right? And it's the energy and the swag. But if I talked to that guy or I needed his attention, he was pulling it off and he's looking me in the eye. And then
100%.
And that was a couple years of training too, because he would take off his first year and lose 16 yards, but he got better at taking care of the ball and not having negative.
He's going to gain that back. He was getting that back the next play.
Yeah, 32 yards the next play. Yeah,
he made us all really good coaches and
good players. Yeah,
so good because he could function in the run game and he could function in the pass game.
And just to speak to that too, like you may have really good players, and I'm sure that wasn't maybe his first position. I'm not sure, but when he came in, but good coaches with good players, if they could be really good coaches, they just don't screw it up. Like, just don't screw it up. Don't overcoach the kid. Let him go play. Don't try to, like you said, don't let your ego get in the way of winning. It's like if you want it to look a certain way, and it may look a different way for you to win, that's probably what needs to happen. So
there was a lot of times where I would try to get cute, maybe in the playoffs or something, and I could tell, like, no, coach, we don't need that. Like, it was his body language and his demeanor. I'm like, well, Clemson's running it.
Right.
Deshaun Watson ran it last Saturday, and guess where you're going to school. So
That's right. That's right.
But he always kind of kept it in check. And you're right. When you get it rolling, especially when you're 5 years in the same scheme, you don't really need a lot. And it's so funny you said that. It's like, I can't tell you how many times all the guys, we don't need to do that. Like, we're fine. Mm-hmm. So that's a great coaching point too. Like, you're good.
Yeah.
Go get some cute.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about the Mac attack. I want you to talk a little bit about defense a little bit later too, but yeah, talk about the Mac attack. That's your offensive system. Explain that. It's been around for a long time now. It's helped a lot of coaches, and talk a little bit about why you created it.
So when I was a young college coach, I got hooked up with the Glazier clinics. Bruce Gobley came to visit me, who was one of the godfathers of the Glazier, and I did the Glaziers for a long time. And we were selling stuff as a college coach. Guys are reaching out to me, and and then I took a break. Well, when I got to South Point, we won our first state championship, and I reached out to the guy at Glazier. I was like, "Hey man, look, I've been out of it, but we just won one. Can you get me back on the circuit?" So I got back on the circuit, and then I met a couple of the guys with Glazier, Greg Vandergriff, the guy at DeLand, Rick Darlington, Rick Stewart, Roger Holmes, the OGs of like Glazier Clinic, the guys who had been doing it for years. And they were all like, "Jason, you need to create a system. You need to create a system for high school coaches." And, this was back when you go to like the clinics and they still had the DVDs for sale, and the Coach's Choice DVDs, like way back. So, I just got hooked up with some of those guys, and they were like, "Man, you just need to create a system." So Rick Stewart, who's created All Access Coaching, we sat down at the 2019 U.S. Army All-American game when I coached in that game, and he was like, let's come up with a system. And so literally I just started filming videos, and we went from formations to coaches' duties to quick game to middle school O-line drills and everything else in between, and we just formulated this system. And with the help of Coach Tube and Glazier and Rick, we just started sending it out to coaches, Football Toolbox, all the websites. And, there is a market for that high school coach in Idaho who is looking to run a high school system, and he doesn't know where to start. So he looks for the Tony Franklin system or the Mac Attack or the Dub Maddox or whoever. They look to these guys to help them. And one thing we did, we used our success of winning those state championships, and it just really took off. It was the fastest selling gross profit on CoachTube at the time in the history of CoachTube. So we just were able to create a system that gave a high school coach anything he needed: practice schedules, drill tapes, installs, you name it. So when a high school coach went to my system, he had everything he needed. So it was really, really good. And obviously, it's leveled off a little bit, so we're trying to, release new content. But at the time, it was really, really hot, and it's still relevant. But it's just a great way for any high school coach that needs resources to go online and check it out. And the other thing I'll say on that, probably the biggest selling point, is it's not an air raid system. It is very multiple. I say it all the time at Glazier Clinic. We are not married to an offensive system. We can go any direction you want to go with what we do. Quarterback run game, air raid, 2 tight end, whatever. So it's very comprehensive, and it's not just air raid, stick and mesh and snag and zone. It's quarterback power, counter bash. It's, you name it, it's in there. So whatever that guy needs, he can pull from that and be successful.
And I think that's huge. You talked about kind of like the toolbox, like here's the menu, here's the arsenal, here's everything that you can do with this. Now it's your job as a coach to evaluate your personnel, pick and pull, do what you want. And I think that's the biggest thing to get across. And the point I was making earlier when we were playing at York against you, I realized at that moment in time, second, I think it was my 3rd year of coaching. I was like, wait a minute, like the Mac Attack, that isn't air raid. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that is he is his own thing. And I think every great coach, I have a buddy who just took his first head coaching job at a small private school, and I was talking to him, and he leans on me, I lean on him, we bounce ideas, and I said, man, one thing that I've learned is everything you do, you got to make yours. You can lean on and you can study and pick and pull, but at the end of the day, and we talk about it all the time, you can't fake it. Like what your philosophy, your culture, your scheme, your playbook, you have to know it within
inside and out and have to be able to execute it, because if not, then you're trying to cookie cutter someone else, and it's not going to come out the way you want it to.
Jamie made a great point earlier when he talked about layering the offense, and you have what you want to do, but do you have answers, right? Yeah. And I mean, I can't tell you, and again, this is kind of being funny, but DK goes 24-25 for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, but we only rush for 40 yards because they give us a 3-1 box or a 4-3 box, and they're giving us, but then they play 7-on-7 and we rush for 400 yards, and my receiver coach is pouting. So, the ability to have answers for whatever they do is definitely been something that I've always been proud of. And then another thing too is I always felt like, then you talk about like the off season, I always felt like we were a year ahead of everybody else in our area, schematically. And I just felt like we were a year ahead of whatever the college guys were doing or what was coming down to high school. We were running that, and we were a year ahead of everybody. And we had a play or a compliment off everything that we did, and it just kept us ahead of the game. And that was a big part of our success outside of having great players, but we were always ahead of the game, so to speak.
And the key with having a system like, your Mac attack or whatever the system may be, it really does teach the coach, it's not just a collection of plays. It's not a playbook. It's like there's like specific answers in place to help them make the right play calls or the right adjustments, in crunch time situations. So you really do have to make it your own. Or take a system and really hone in on that system to help, especially a young coach. I remember, I've gone through a lot of those things, but certainly it's my own now, but it still has elements of, air raid or the Gus Malzahn piece and using, the progression from R4. And so you just have to make it your own. You have to merge it, but you have to know how to implement it, and then also how to make those adjustments too when it's crunch time. So I know the Mac attack is awesome for that.
That's so true. And, I always caution coaches, like taking a coordinator job where you have to learn somebody else's terminology. Like, that's a tough deal, man. It's 3rd and 3. You're trying to think about what the other guy's calling it, and it's in 3rd round. Like, can't
unless it's Saban. If Saban wants me to use his defensive terms, I could. But I agree with you, Coach.
I kind of want to go down this rabbit hole a little bit. I'll try to. Yeah, I like to go down this rabbit hole. So I've always thought it to be weird that you would hire an offensive coordinator and not give him autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would just call it then.
Yeah, that's right.
I might stir some. I'm sure there's hundreds of situations like that, but it's harder for the coordinator to operate in that capacity because he's constantly thinking about the head coach second guessing or using the right terminology or being afraid maybe to, and maybe they have a great relationship and they can collaborate, but it'd be really, really hard to take that position unless you kind of came up through the system and, you've been on staff for 8 years and I could see that working, but that would be very difficult.
Yeah, when you're worried about your creativity being questioned and what you're calling and what you're doing, and like you said, second guessing, that's true. And, if the head coach set the blueprint of like, look, let's be 60-40 this, or, be a conservative on 3rd and long, or what, there's maybe some structural, cultural things that maybe you would be okay with, but yeah, it would be hard if you knew somebody was looking over your shoulder. That would be tough.
Yeah, and Coach, to go back to what you're talking about a minute ago, I think, working for Bobby at York, he did a really great job of being supportive and keeping coaches hungry and non-complacent. He supported us when we brought Brent Dearman in to talk about the Malzahn system. He got Dante Bartu, who's now at Oregon, to come in and talk about the Sabanese defense and stuff like that. And he did a really good job. He had a in-house coaches clinic. So instead of us all going and getting a hotel room at the yearly clinic and playing golf and hanging out, hey guys, we're going to run an in-house clinic and every coach is going to get up and present their position. And those things challenged us in ways that benefit us. But it's challenged me because if I ever become a head coach again, try to do things for your staff like that. Who do y'all want to go listen to? Like, do y'all want to go to Tennessee? Do you want to bring someone in? And I think that's a really good importance because we didn't just copy what Brent Dearman did. We listened, we understood the reasoning behind and took his toolbox and said, you know what? here's how we can apply what fits the kids we have.
Yeah.
The thing I really enjoyed when I was a college coach, we always went off campus a couple of days into summer, and I had to stand up and present my position manual, or if I was in charge of pump block, I had to talk about that. And so that's a great way to do that. And, funny story about BC is when I was with him at York that year, we were running the air raid, right? So he's like, you get the quarterback and the running back. So I'm like, damn, coach, we're in a 4-wide offense, right? I look in there, there's 17 DBs. I'm like, some of the guys will play offense. So I think that was the first time BC had ever had kind of an offensive coach kind of like, hold on,
He
man.
loved that. He loved that
Man.
air raid.
Man, my favorite thing, man, with PC, all favorite time thing is if you're running the scout team huddles, it better be efficient like an assembly line.
Best I've ever
Like
seen.
2 huddles, play, and if you were off schedule, it was coming. But that's efficiency. That is a certain way in reps, and that's my favorite memory ever of coaching with Bobby. Is when it's offensive scout time, it better be the most efficient thing we've ever seen because we need reps. And
It was great.
Loved it.
Yeah, and Bobby too was it was really good at allowing coaches to coach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he gave them full autonomy. I remember when he hired me as coordinator, and I'd coached with him for about 4 years at that point, and I'd kind of made my way up from like a JV wide receiver coach and all that. Man, he gave me the full reins. I know he's a defensive guy, but he gave me full reign of the offense, and I like that about him. And I also took that as when I became a head coach, I wanted the same thing. Yeah. And I remember going in there, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing really, but I tried to prepare as if I was going to get that job, and it ended up working out. But yeah, he's an interesting guy, man. He'll hold your feet to the fire, won't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
End of every Saturday meeting, I waited for the door to open about 1:30. Hey, man, how are they? They're pretty good, but we think we'll be okay. We got them. Yeah, sounds good.
Got 'em, coach.
Like that was it. We got them. That was it every Saturday.
Yeah, 9-hour meeting.
The year I was with him at York was that the year that Huddle made its way to high school. So we were still watching DVDs in 11, and made some long Saturdays with those DVDs. Now
we were all afraid to leave the building. It's like if we left before the defensive guys did, then we were in trouble.
Yeah, he got his wings one time, and Sherry delivered them about 12:30, and I was gone. I was like, sorry, coach, I didn't tell you I needed wings. So, all good.
Coach, little bit diving into the Mac Attack part. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy and beliefs in the RPO, whether it's pre-snap, based off leverage and numbers, post-snap, winning advantage? Like, talk a little bit about what RPO means to you and how you'd like to use it within the Mac Attack system.
So, a couple things. I've just gotten to the point now where I don't even ask receivers to block anymore. I just think that a lot of times coaches, man, we get so mad because we got a 140-pound slot trying to go crack a linebacker on running power over there, and he's not going to block you. You can't get there. So it's another layer to the offense about how do you take advantage of the defense, and how do you make them defend the whole field. So in our system, we have 3 levels of RPOs. We have a first level RPO where there's a triple option component to that. That's our first level read RPO, where we have the option principles in our offense. I think that's a great component of an offense because the defense has to defend option. So we're going to force the defense in our first level RPO stuff to play the dive and the quarterback and the pitch. So that's something that's been really good to us, where, we'll teach inside zone, we're reading the end with some form of bubble, arrow, out, now screen on the perimeter as the pitch guy. It's modern day triple option, where back in the day it was, the dive and then the pitch. Well, our pitch is now a bubble. That's 2025 triple option. So we're forcing the defense to defend the entire field. We're forcing the defense to defend the option, which is something that's great, and especially if you have an athletic quarterback. So the first is the first level triple option, and then the second is a second level RPO read. Now we're getting into where we're reading a second level defender off the run game where we can't block that defender. One of the standard ones we do is where we're reading an outside linebacker and we're blocking the run, and we're running a glance or a pop or an out or a stick, and we're reading the post-snap movement of that outside linebacker. And then the third one we read is the third level RPO, where now we're reading post-snap rotations of a safety. And if a safety drops weak for run support, we'll throw the glance. We do bubble slants and things of that nature. But we carry those 3 RPO reads, and then we also can carry a post-snap movement RPO where we're reading the post-snap movement of a linebacker. I've not been as much into that because I'm worried about the mesh and things of that nature. And then this year, we were probably as good as we've ever been at the one-word tempo run RPOs, which is a whole nother layer of the system where we have a pre-snap RPO and we're running the ball. And we got into a lot of double stack stuff, trips bunch, wide stack, a lot of the Tennessee stuff, where the quarterback has the ability to throw a pre-snap RPO or run the ball post-snap. So we have a lot of different ones we do. And then, of course, the last one is the quarterback run game RPO. I've gotten away from that the last 2 years because we haven't had a really great athletic quarterback. But when we had Darion Kendrick and then the guy I had at Grayson who's with LSU now, we're running stick Q counter, we're running stick Q draw, we're running quarterback counter with a wheel route by the tailback, and we're reading the outside backer. So that's 5 or 6 different ones we've used, and they're all in the system. And that, again, that's the beauty of it is, which one do you want to major in and which one do you want to spend the most time in? And it gives the coaches something to practice and work on and get good at. But they're all off our base run game, inside zone, wide zone, GT, GH counter, dart, trap, and then that's it. So it's pretty extensive stuff.
I like the fact that you have that menu, and we talked about that too, that vertical, layering of your offense, and that's awesome to be able to pull from that kind of stuff. I coach quarterbacks. I know you coach quarterbacks. My biggest question for quarterback guys is how do you teach progressions, and then how do you tell what's open? So if you don't mind going through that in your offense and how you kind of teach that, and I'll let you kind of have it.
I think the what I learned a long time ago as a college coach and then a high school coach is we're always going to look, we're talking more pass game, like middle field open, middle field closed. That's the thing that I think I learned a long time ago is getting your quarterback to understand pre-snap is middle field open, middle field closed. And then from there, we start looking at corner access, and the quarterback is able to kind of tell, okay, well, if I've got middle field open, right, I'm probably going to get quarters coverage, or I'm going to get some type of cover 2 or 2-man. That's what I'm going to get. If it's middle of the field closed, then that's one high safety. I'm either going to get cover 3, cover 1, or some type of 3 cloud rotation. So for me, it's getting him to understand the middle of the field either open or closed, and then the safety techniques and then the corner techniques that come with that. And then from there, we're looking at a lot of pre-snap grass. And we always talk to our quarterback about hard focus the mic, tunnel vision the safeties when we're taking our drop and we're reading the coverages. So you've got to be able to hard focus the safeties. I remember we were at York, we always talk when I was with you at Kings Mountain about holding the number up for the quarterback. So the quarterback can hard focus the mic, tunnel vision the safeties, and then see rotation. We do a ton of mirrored route stuff where we're taking advantage of grass. Okay, that's one of the first things that we teach is we're trying to give our quarterback as many easy throws as we can where he's taking advantage of open grass now. But at the same time, when that grass is taken away, we've got answers or adjustments in the routes in order to take advantage. So we're running out fade, right? Quarters coverage, we're going to throw the out. But if he rolls up in cover 2, then we're going to stick and stop in the grass, possible hole shot or possible stick and stop. Like it turns into a stick route where he turns out. So we spend a lot of time on our variations and our conversions of a lot of our mirrored pass game. And then when you get in the drop back stuff, it's a lot of half field read. I try to do that. But yeah, it all goes back to middle field open, middle field closed, and then what type of access is he getting on the perimeter?
Yeah, I really like the fact that, I hear quarterback coaches all the time talk about, we got to identify the coverage, but this kind of stops there. Or they may say, well, we look at, the safeties in the corners. I really like the fact that on your stuff that you hard. So say that one more time. So you hard ID the mic, hard focus the mic.
Safeties.
That way you can kind of see the rotation. I love that. That's
You got
good.
it. And Carmen Felix, who was our OC at Chattanooga, he's one of the best quarterback guys I've ever been around. And, he's from that Jimbo Fisher tree.
Yeah.
And, just again, if you're not hard focused and you can't see 3 rotation and
Right.
you're up strong and you're running 4 verts and the receivers are running seam. So I think that's a big part of it. You have to be able to have a hard focus and see the coverage, but also have an understanding that, well, if I get a hover safety, most likely I'm getting quarters and I'm going to get open access and I can throw the grass throws.
Right.
But if I get a Q and 1/2 safety where the safeties are wide, I'm getting a hard corner. So that once they learn the safety techniques, and we spent a lot of time, closed access, press access, open access, ink or inside leverage, outside leverage, man turn, zone turn. I spend a lot of time talking about those techniques with safeties and corners, which I think further allows the quarterback to understand coverages instead of just, what's that coverage is going to change a lot. So I think that's a good way to do it.
I like that. And I'm actually going to, on our quick game side, we do quick game on one side and intermediate on the other. Mm-hmm. So for instance, like stick, we're actually going to really focus on key reading or like key IDing that skiff, but also having that soft field of vision. So I think that's what we're going to try to work on as well. Not necessarily the coverage piece, but definitely training our eyes on like a specific defender to the quick side. But you still have to be soft enough or have that peripheral vision to see, any kind of coverage adjustments that you may not have anticipated pre-snap.
And once we come off the mirrored route stuff, I mean, again, we are going to live day 1, day 2, day 3, man. It is 2 by 2, man. And we are teaching everything 2 by 2, 2 by 2. So we'll spend 3 days on 2 by 2. And it's a lot of mirrored routes. I mean, out fade, double slant, bubble slant, arrow slant. I mean, it is hitch fade. It is a ton of mirrored routes. So they really can do a good job of kind of essentially picking a pre-snap grass side and taking the access throw. But then there's also times where you'll hear me say, hey, we're running stick to back, air raid stick to back, stick to back, stick to back. Like whether that's sound or not, I don't know. But when we run air raid stick, I want him keying that defender like you say, and we're throwing stick to back. And once he gets really good, then he can pre-snap for his double slant. If the flat defender's in the box and the corner's got open access, he can take his boundary slant or whatever you run away from stick. So, but, it's pretty simple stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, that air raid stick to back out of 2 by 2 coach. And, once he gets so good at that, he can even have the peripheral to, okay, well, what takes that away? If they play cover 2, we got to be able to take the whole shot, and that's just a peripheral vision thing. And the one thing you said that I think is super important is understanding, like the biggest thing that I try to talk about all the time is application versus knowledge. It's one thing for a quarterback to be able to sit down and draw on a piece of paper, cover 2, cover 4, cover 1, and all the coverages. It's another thing for him to recognize safety technique and corner technique that's going to give him the keys to process and accelerate his read. A big thing that we teach, or for me, is when I'm teaching quarterbacks, like on our punch step of our drops, we're keying boundary safety, especially if we see a lot of 2-high teams, because most time the boundary safety is going to give you the quickest, fastest read on, are they going to stay open or are they going to close it? Is he spinning down or spinning to the middle? And I think the technique portion, and that's what the last couple off seasons sitting down with my coordinator, he wanted, hey man, teach me more of the techniques to give more nuggets to my quarterback to help, because like we were playing a team that ran a lot of like 2 read, and then they would run just straight cover 2 sometimes. And I'm like, read the safety's feet. What is his technique? When he flips his hips and then immediately playing half, it's straight cover 2. But when he's flat foot reading or just pedaling backwards, I said that's the key part. And that's just a simple example, but I'm right there. I think that is great stuff.
Yeah, hover technique, Q and 1/2, and kind of like going back to what you said. There are some basics of the route, like going back to the air raid stick, like stick to back, right? Well, you got the mandatory outside release. Okay, I'm not teaching my quarterback to even look at that right now, but if we're playing a team who, hey, they're a ton of cover 2, and the safety over there is lazy getting off the hash, then we may look, okay, this week, let's look at maybe taking a shot on that hole shot. Because every quarterback I've been around, if the hole shot's in play, he's going to throw it every stinging time. So I just try to really get them to lock in on what I want, and then you can also start adding the other stuff to it. If I'm more into if they're going to give it to us this week, let's take a look at it, or maybe you motion and give them that. But I try to just stick with the basics initially, and then layer it like Jamie says.
Yeah, we do a lot to try to teach that to our kids in the off season. So especially our quarterbacks, we do it with the whole team, but typically it pays off when we can go through like class sessions with our quarterbacks, especially when you're talking about identifying coverages. And I'm not sure that our quarterbacks in game know exactly what coverage it is when they make the decision, but their decisions typically work out to the point where they're kind of making it on the fly. And then when we come off the field, it's like, that was cover 3, because you don't have to look at the whole coverage to determine that. If it's middle field closed and the corner's bailing, then obviously those are things. But I like to hear your thoughts on how you train quarterbacks and maybe in the off season, or what's your process? Is it in practice? And maybe give us some specific, give me some specific tips on how you may train those guys to identify that maybe in game or are there drills that you do, or you try to set it up in routes on air, that kind of thing?
Well, so the quarterback school in the off season is really good. Where when I was at Myers Park, I met with the quarterbacks at 7:00 in the summer, 2 or 3 days a week before summer workouts, and we were on the board and we made them draw up coverages and we watched film. So that's a great way to do it. You definitely resonated when you said air routes on air, because we're always playing coverages and showing coverages and routes on air. Like, we're never static. We're never running a route. We're running it on air, but we're always showing them the coverages. Yeah. I think having the quarterbacks verbalize and visualize the read out loud is really, really good too. Where we show them a coverage and he talks about his read, and then after that we talk about what was the coverage. Tell me why you said this or you did that. So I just think having dialogue with them, and when they're able to tell you why, then I think that makes you feel really good. But film study, quarterback classroom work, routes on air, showing them different coverages, and I think just showing them the coverages they're going to see in 7-on-7, and even if you have to slow it down and talk through a coverage and show them, like, look, here's what we're going to show you, and then make sure they see it and process it the right way. But again, we just get locked into the same stuff over and over and over. We don't see a lot of exotic coverages, but I just think you just have to just show them and visualize it and just keep practicing it over and over and over.
And they tend to get a feel for it for sure.
No, absolutely.
And I think that's kind of where Pro Quick Draw makes my job personally easy. In the summer when we're doing those football 101 sessions, and even in the spring, it's so easy to build your individual cards and be able to auto-populate it in presentation mode to present it. But then you can control how the kids are seeing it and how they take it home. I mean, Pro Quick Draw is just so efficient in terms of you can make the install and quickly, with everybody, most people have an iPhone, you can send a PDF straight through there and the kids have it, because that's how they're going to see it. Now, you got to be a little crazy or a little cautious with that, because that's how quick it can get out and be sent to people also. But there's just so many ways to use Pro Quick Draw to make your job easier. And the teaching portion that we're kind of talking about, it has sped up so much time with those kids. I can't talk about it enough.
Kids are visual learners, and I actually redid every one of my presentations this year on Pro Quick Draw, and the coaches at Glazier loved the drawings, especially the pass game. And I'm just now scratching the surface, but I know PJ and those guys, it's an amazing platform for sure.
Oh, let's talk before we leave this segment for Mac Attack. I do want to talk a little bit about play calling style and maybe how you go into like a game plan for that week. And are you trying to be balanced? And what is really balanced to me is not necessarily balance, like 50-50. And I want to hear your thoughts on that. Do you have something in your mind that says we need to be balanced? Talk a little bit about that. I'm a play caller. You're a really great play caller. Give us some insights on your mindset and philosophy as you kind of game plan, and then how you call the game.
One of the things I always like to do on Friday is I show my quarterbacks the game plan, and I talk third down with them. I think that's a big one is, hey, I'm going to call this on my first 3rd and long. I'm going to call this on my first third and short? And making sure they're okay with our first third down calls. Obviously, I've always, for 10 years as a high school coach, I've scripted the first 12 plays of the game. I feel like those 12 good plays are good against every choice down. The only time I come off of those plays is third down. I try to show 12 different formations the first 12 plays. The first 3 or 4 throws for my quarterback are going to be layup. I call them layup throws, where I want him to be 3 of 3, 4 or 4. It may be 4 screens. It may be a hitch. It may be something. And that's always been really good for us because I can't tell how many times we've scored on the first drive because of just the cleanness of our drive. I call them our drive starters and our open script. And then, when I'm in a game, I try to carry runs and passes and things that are good on, I call it choice down, which is first down and second and medium. We just have our menu and we just call those plays. I'm very, very thorough on third down, 3rd and 1 to 3, 3rd 4 to 6, 3rd 7 to 9, 3rd and 11 plus. So we have that menu. I can go back and show you reports from our state championship years, and this is the honest God truth. We were 52 run, 48% pass, 51 pass, 49% run. It was unbelievable to see that report. So I'm going to be balanced. My guy that's in the box, he has a touch chart, and if we ran it on P and 10, we're probably going to throw it on P and 10 the next time. I just believe in balance. I think that's important. I'm a very, very aggressive play caller. We've been known to take a play action shot on the -1. I just think you have to, especially with no huddle tempo, I think we can dictate the flow of the game and keeping our foot on the throat of the defense and not letting up, kind of that all gas, no break mentality. I think you got to know when to kind of play complementary football too, especially if you're struggling. Maybe you got to know that punt's a good play sometimes, take an ego out of it. You can never give up on the run game. You have to be hard-headed when you're trying to run the football. I think that's critical. You got to run the ball early. So, there's just a lot of things that go into it, but, you just sudden change. You got to have something ready at all times. You got to have a trick play ready to go. You have to have a play after a timeout. If your quarterback's struggling, you have to have answers. If, there's just so many things that go into it, but I believe in balance. I believe in scripting the first 12 plays. I believe in showing a lot of different things early and then just going from there. So,
and how many different things do you take into the next week? It may vary, but do you have a set number? Hey, I'm going to show something different, or do you hold things until big games?
So yeah, it depends on kind of who we're playing and how good we are. For example, this year we got into a lot of the one-word tempo power stuff, and the only way we could run the ball this year was going one-word tempo power because our quarterback could not run a lick. So we just from 1 week to the other, it was one-word power, 20 unbalanced. Then the next week it was one-word power, trips close with the screen and the tight end. So we carried something different every single week, but it was the same play.
Right.
At other places, third round of the playoffs, we're playing a team who hadn't seen what we did earlier. We may show them a total different offense, and we've been able to do that over the years. Again, we've lined up and run stuff that they had never seen. So I think it's based on where you are, how good you are, your people, your personnel. But we're going to show, because again, there's not a lot of investment to a new formation or a couple new formations if you're just carrying the same runs. Right. So I will show different schemes every week. And then especially specifically in the passing game, if again, we're a 2x2 team. So if we're really good at a concept, but they're going to take that away out of our 2x2 set, then I'm probably going to put it in out of 20 personnel or 11. I'm going to try to find a formation that maybe locks them in a coverage so we can throw and execute how we want to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I always think about like trying to minimize as many variables as you can with your formations and really personnel packages too. Because if you're like, for me, when we were doing air raid, we would get like maybe 3 or 4 different coverages to 2x2. And that's really hard to determine, but you can help your quarterback out if you can get into some formation sets that you're going to get like trips nub, like how many how many checks are you going to have to that? How many empty checks are you going to have to that? So, yeah.
Yeah, Coach.
Love it, Coach. Love it.
This is kind of the last question to kind of wrap this part of the segment up. I want to kind of know what your thought process is when things aren't going good. So for example, let's talk about a little bit. Okay, P and 10, you lose yardage, or you come out, you're opening script. You go 3 and out. Like, talk about those times where things aren't going great, and how do you adjust or on the fly to make it where it's like, okay, here's what we need to do.
I think the first thing, man, is it's all about, controlling your emotions and being unflinchable as a coach and your players. I think that's a huge, huge thing is, we're not even talking scheme. We're talking about, hey, how do you respond to adversity? We get hit in the mouth early. We turn it over early. So that's the first thing, is keeping everybody under control. So that's the first thing that I always focus on, is making sure everybody just takes a chill pill and we don't flinch. And then from there, if it didn't work early, then I'm probably going to really start measuring and running the football. What can we do in the run game that let's say the quarterback throws an interception early. Okay, well, I got to calm him down. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to run the ball and, get some run game going, get some momentum going that way. I think that's really, really critical. And then to always go back to what you do the best. When there's a on my call sheet, it says, when we are struggling, NASCAR, tempo, and get your best players the ball. Okay. So, that's been on my call sheet for 10 years. So we're going to go back to what do we do best, which is we're going to run the ball. That's one, keep everybody calm, and then try to find what we do the best and see if we can just start executing our base stuff. I mean, there's been games where we're struggling early and then we throw out fade up and down the field, and it's like, dang, it's just so hard. Zone and out fade, zone out fade. I mean, they're blitzing, playing zero, and they're playing off man, and we're just throwing out routes down. And you're like, God, what am I thinking? So
I'll never forget, Coach, when in 2018, I think we were playing Lancaster. I think it was Bolton, and they were running like a 3-3 stack, and like they were like manning up our slot because we did such a good job with Power and Buck with the RPO. And in the first half, it was like a grind. It was a traditionally great, gritty football game. And for whatever reason, mid-third quarter, they went to too high for whatever reason. And I think
Buck up and down
3 plays in a row, Buck sweep, and Oglesby to the house, 3 plays in a row.
I mean, you go too high. It's like, just try to go back to what you know. If they're going to make a little bit of an adjustment. And now I think since then, I'm able to get into some more sets to maybe dictate, coverage or fronts and that kind of thing. So
go back. Always going to go back to what your kids believe in, and then you also need to understand that you have to ride. Jamie, I've heard you say this a million times: ride the highs and lows of the game, right? So if you're struggling early, that's okay. Just go back to what you do: run the ball, take care of the ball. Maybe rely on the defense early, flip position. There's so many variables that may be affecting your success. You might be backed up 2 or 3 series early in the first quarter, and you just hadn't had a chance to get anything going. So there's so many things.
And you got to evaluate all that. Maybe it's not scheme. Maybe it's effort. Maybe it's lack of focus. Maybe it's
drop.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
The rain, it's raining like crazy or whatever the case may be. So that's good to hear from you too, Coach. You got a lot of experience calling it, man. I'm excited about this next segment, though. Talking about rapid fire, two-minute drill with Coach McManus. So I'm excited. Dustin, you take the first one, man.
Sure, Coach. You've been coaching a long time. What have you found in high school to be the toughest coverage to throw the ball against?
Man, two trap.
So is that when the corners are reading number 2 and they're just trying to trap anything in the flats, or that kind of intermediate? Yeah, that's a tough one.
I think anytime they're taking away the access throws and too hard or too trap, because again, you're making a high school quarterback take away the access and grass throw.
Yeah, the quick game is out.
Yeah, the quick game is out. So you're making him throw corner routes and benders and stuff. So anything that takes away the access throws and 3 cloud to the trips is a good one, because we do a lot of screens and things to the trips, and that corner knifing and cutting number 1 is good. But too cloud or too trap or too hard for sure, because it takes away the access throws of a high school quarterback.
So what is the best, and this might be giving away some secrets here, but the best red zone defense that you like to go against? And that could be, front coverage.
Man, I love being man.
You're going to throw a snag for a touchdown every time.
Snag, mesh, pick routes.
That's right.
Motion pick routes 1,000 different ways. We will find a way to run a pick route somehow to get a guy open flat.
Exactly. And then, because a lot of guys, they don't really change coverages sometimes. It seems like it depends on the level of ball and it depends on who you're playing. But there's guys that could run cover 3 on the 10. Mm-hmm. You're like, man, that's kind of weird. But
yeah, we play teams who the ball's on the floor and the corner's backing up in the end.
It's like
deep thirds out the end zone. It's where the
old pick route didn't work against cover 3 on the 5.
That's right. Yeah, they just accidentally they're in cover 3 and
they blew the call or whatever. Yeah, high school football, man.
Mm-hmm. Coach, can steal some more of your nuggets. What's your go-to concept if you're going to hang your hat on? It's going to be your number one install, and it's what no matter what personnel you got at quarterback, you can run that concept and you're going to be okay.
So I'm going to give you 2. Number 1 is 3-man snag. It is a great one. Corner, snag, scat, arrow. We teach our corner out as a bender versus wide safety. It's great versus man. You can also teach it as a snag back concept where you take the corner out of it. So that snag is in his face to the back. And then also same side drive. We call it Z and X drive. It's opposite of shallow. So you've got a dig by 2, a drive by 1, and then a check swing. So it's a half field read for the quarterback where he's reading away, drive, dig to back. We won a lot of football games, and that's been good everywhere I've been.
Yeah, that's been our number 1 touchdown play probably since 2014. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been great.
Sure.
And I think you left that legacy there at York too. I mean, after you left, we just carried that right on in. That's awesome. All right. Best coaching / leadership resource that you rely on. What's something that you read or are currently reading that you would want to share with us?
So when we were at South Point, we did the book study with Urban Meyer, Above the Line. In our 2017 and 18 season, we actually Coach Hare did an amazing job with that. I know you're still doing it. It was amazing. The whole blame, complain, defend, the E+R=O, above the line, below the line behavior. Those are great teaching points and nuggets for high school kids and a culture. And I've been taught so many over the years. Again, we said it earlier about not let your ego get in the way of winning, especially as an offensive play caller, man. It's so fun to want to line up and run mesh, air raid, spread, T-wheel, post, dig, grab, blah, 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 empty. But, man, if you can't do it, don't do it. So, leadership is, you got to – I think integrity and leadership, you got to be a great man and a great person as a leader. I think that's huge. You have to be a man of integrity when you're leading people and leading kids. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, Coach, I think you this is the second time you brought that ego piece up. And so I'm a member of my home church is Transformation Church, Indian, South Carolina. Pastor Derwin Gray played in the league. And he talks about ego all the time, stands for it edging God out. And I think that really applies. And I love that saying. And even from the football aspect, edging God's play out will hurt you too. Don't get rid of power. You can't edge that play out. But I think that is constantly in my mind for ego to just try to, to stay humble and things of that sort. Anytime your ego gets to a point, you're edging God out, and that's not what we're trying to do. So
I have noticed as a high school coach that again, I may make some high school coaches mad, but there's some egos with some high school coaches, and it bothers me. And I remember when I was at York with Coach Carroll, I mean, we beat Daniel 14-7, and I'm over there hugging David Prince's neck after the game, but then we also beat somebody 49-42. It didn't matter. We won the game. And I've seen that for years, man, where the defensive coaches are mad because the offense scored a bunch of points, and it's unbelievable, man. So at the end of the day, they don't ask you what the score of your games were. They just want to know your record. So that's a challenge for a lot of high school coaches to take your ego out of it, and it's all about the kids, and it doesn't matter. So
Bolton, it's time for the DP Lancaster story in 2017. It's time.
Oh yeah, I think
It
that's
is
a great
time.
that's a great one. So yeah, we're at Lancaster, and you may have to help me with some of these details, but this is 2016, and it's a close game. It's a close game, and and I think we've had a couple turnovers. So we're pretty tight. I think at half we have a turnover that leads to a score. I think it was a fumble, scoop, and score. We're down on like the 15-yard line, and we're trying to like do a 2-minute drive to like take the lead, or maybe we already had the lead and we're trying to double up. This is old Knox. Knox was calling the plays, so shout out to Knox Baggett. And so I'm just a receiver coach, and I'm the signaler, and I'm getting after it. And we're it's back in my younger days, and so we give that up, and I can just see Bobby and David Prince just steaming down there on the side. I'm like, what are we doing? Trying to go it's like almost like Nick Saban style. Like, what are we doing? And I could just see it coming. And so, man, thankfully, when they fumbled, scoop, and scored, we returned a kickoff for a touchdown with no time left in the second half. And so like saved us. And then we come back and we end up winning by a few scores, I believe. And we're coming off the field, and our defense coordinator, I'll just say his name, DP David Prince.
Great,
man. He's like my dad's best friend, by the way. So they're like childhood best friends. They both pull for Green Bay, whatever. He's my guy. So we're running off the field, jogging off the field up the hill at Lancaster. And I just kind of tap him on the back and say, hey, man, coach, good game, buddy. And I'm just kind of going. He said, no, you good game. Like it was our fault that they gave up that touchdown, which it was. But just it was just so funny. And then I didn't talk to him for like 3 weeks. And but no, it was good. We're close now.
There is a mentality with those guys, man. I mean, like if they give up a shutout at the end,
yes. I love it though. I love it.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And the kids feed off of that so much too. They don't want to give it up. And it's like, well, do you put the starters back in a blowout? And it's just because it means so much to that group. And I think that molded me as a coach to be around them for the 6 or 7 years that I was there. I mean, it's just we're just blessed to be a part of that. I'm blessed to be a part of that whole coaching tree.
Me too, man. It's unbelievable.
Well, Coach, man, we really appreciate you being on here. Tell us where to find, more information about MacAttack. Where can guys go to get that or access that?
So you guys can go to coachtube.com and just Google the MacAttack Spread RPO system. All Access Coaching is another website that it's on, or I would prefer you reach out to me directly if you're interested in any content. I can get you linked up, and we have a lot of stuff on the Glacier Drive, and we've redone a lot of our stuff. I am excited. I'm going to be releasing a book soon.
Awesome.
Amy Dustin, that's something that I would encourage you guys to do too. Hopefully it's going to be on Amazon in about 2 months. And basically we're just transcribing the MacAttack system into a book. So it'll be on Amazon and be ready to order. So feel free to reach out to me on that. And but yeah, it's really good stuff. It's helped a lot of coaches. The reviews and the feedback over the years has been really, really exciting, and the testimonials have been amazing. So coachtube.com, allaccesscoaching.com, or reach out to me directly.
Absolutely.
I can ever do to help coaches. Really appreciate that.
Definitely will, Coach. We appreciate you coming on, and those listening. Another coach who believes in Pro Quick Draw, who uses it and understands the power behind it. We will put the exclusive affiliate link for a free trial in the show notes as well, along with Coach's information. But Coach, we appreciate you so much being on, and I've learned a lot, and can't wait to kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit on some of the things you spoke on tonight. So we appreciate you being on.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Coach. It's been an honor, man.
Thanks for tuning into the Coach Speak podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at coachspeakpodcast1@gmail.com. And if you have a question for our Q&A segment, don't forget to submit it through the form in the episode description. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.